tea. So this is the holiday edition, and last night my daughter, who's 10 years old, asked me to add glitter Crocs to her Christmas list. And so I went on Amazon, bought the glitter Crocs, and here they are on my doorstep one day later, which is remarkable and a testament to the fact that Amazon is a well-oiled machine, has been a profoundly successful company, and its success on the e-commerce realm has helped it build and grow in other areas, including the web services area. And here today with me is Wright. He is sales operations lead for the Southeast for Amazon Web Services. Welcome, Lee.
Thank you, Helen. Thanks for having me.
So tell me a little bit about your background and your journey to Amazon.
I've been in tech companies in the DC area since 2000, whether it was with global trade management, energy, green tech. I worked with a LMS or learning management system company for a number of years, and then sort of moved around in different technology companies to help them grow and expand. And as the sales operations sort of career path expanded, and it's now actually a real thing that people can go do, sort of moved into different organizations and gotten bigger. And then that's sort of what led me to Amazon, is I've done this with a bunch of smaller companies to help them grow and expand, either get bought, have a transaction, or go public. And then obviously with joining Amazon, and specifically with AWS, so I'm on the Amazon Web Services side, and that's very different sort of than the retail side. So the explanation of how you got your package in 12 hours.
We work with a lot of mid-sized companies, and we run marketing, and so we're doing lead generation work and sales enablement work. You know, they're smaller companies. They don't have the ability to build out sales operations teams specifically, but it seems like to me that would be a remarkable position to be in, because you can really help bridge that gap between marketing and sales, which often is a chasm.
Yeah, and I've definitely seen that. I think I was in small organizations where I found around 100 to 125 people, you find all of a sudden you can't keep everything going anymore. You can't keep your hands on everything, right? And that's typically when a guy like me would show up from a sales operations perspective, where if things started to get disorganized, you need best practices, and to scale and grow, you have to start putting some infrastructure in place, some standard procedures, so that you can kind of manage the business. And that's, to your point, sales operations has kind of grown into that role of helping bridge the gap between not only the sales, so you have a new salesperson, how do you train them? How do you reduce their time to ramp so that they're on board and selling? But then also, how do you sort of bridge to marketing with the demand gen, lead generation component and the top of the funnel to make those new salespeople productive, right? So you need somebody in between that understands technology, understands sales, understands marketing, understands the enablement procedures, and how to sort of tie it all together.
I think this is really interesting for a lot of companies that might be mid-size or smaller, or perhaps professional services companies that I'm linked with on LinkedIn, that don't necessarily have a very, yet very sophisticated sales department, or they're trying to look to build one up, and how to think about organizing it, how to think about bridging that gap, because it's so important.
Right. And, the joke that, revenue covers all sins is true to a point, but then internally, what's the cost of how you're churning people, or you're just throwing bodies at things to try and get things done that could be done in a faster, easier, repeatable fashion? That's when I think great sales operations can really lend a hand. And I would say even to small or mid-sized organizations, it's super important to make that investment as fast as you can to help corral it, because then you can avoid racing so far ahead that you're not ready for it. Because there's nothing worse than, needing it, not having it.
Right.
Right. Because then it becomes very apparent.
What would you say is coming down the pike either next year or in the next 5 years that marketers or sales leaders should be aware of?
I think the democratization of data, BI, and analytics is probably the biggest thing going on in sales operations. It's now pushing into sales and really back even into marketing. Organizations like Salesforce, who just bought Tableau, or Clary, which is a great BI analytics tool, are giving people who are not necessarily data analysts or data scientists the ability to play like one, right? And to get insights. You know, my past company, we rolled out Clary, and within 2 quarters, it changed the conversation. We no longer use spreadsheets. We no longer used even Salesforce, but we use Clary to drive our pipeline conversations. And all of this data was presented in a very logical, easy fashion. And it became our data warehouse to say, okay, where were we last year at this time versus this year at this time, last quarter at this time versus that, like, and these things which would take a lot of heavy lifting to do manually is now just the click of a button.
I always like to hear tips on management techniques. So what are your secrets?
Never, I always tell people who work for me a couple of things. One, I never avoid conflict. I think your responsibility as a manager is to tell people when they're doing great and when they're doing poorly, right? And I think it's very easy to do the great part. And it can be difficult to do the part when you pull somebody aside and say, hey, Tim, you're really not doing this, or, you know, Jane, this did not meet the mark and here's why. But if I think you do it, and when you give feedback, it needs to be very in time. You can't wait till the end of the year to manage your team.
Now we come to my favorite part, or one of my favorite parts. Tell me about your mug. Mine needs no explanation.
So, okay, can you see that clearly? Yeah.
No?
So this is a mug given to me by my wife, Colleen, and I'm a big cyclist. I try and bike more than I drive every year, and I try and bike to work. Yeah, and it is a life-changing thing to get out of your car every day and bike as opposed to commuting. Sort of opens up things, and I'm fortunate in the DC area. We have a great network of trails, and there's a great cycling community here. But this is a mug she gave to me, and you know, I'm on the bigger side of cycling, so for me, hills are terrible. So that's my mindset when I go into hills.